Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you again in the panel discussions that we are having now. And as you know, this topic for this panel discussion is resiliency for digital enterprises and refining the recovery and continuity in the age of extreme digitization. As we know that we are in the uncertain times after COVID, the situations are still improving, and we are digitizing. We are trying to adopt new solutions, technologies in terms of remote work culture or in terms of working in a hybrid work culture. Resiliency and cyber resiliency is very much important for any digital enterprise to keep its business continue and if there are any certain incidents, the recovery plays a very crucial role. And that's why today we are having the discussion planned around the resiliency for digital enterprises and how to refine the recovery and continuity plan in the age of extreme digitization. So to discuss this particular theme, I have eminent panelists with me. I will call upon every panelist one by one. So I have Mr. Agnidipta Sarkar, who is a group CISO for Bicon. I would like to welcome Agnidipta Sarkar to this panel. Second, I have Jaspreet Singh, who is a partner trust and transformation for uh, Grand Thornton Bharat. Welcome, Jaspreet.
Hi, everybody.
I have Dr. Karpagam Vilvanathan, who is a professor at Sri Ramakrishna Engineering College, Coimbatore. And I have Mr. Riaz Ahmed, who is a head crisis and business continuity management and global shared services for for British Petroleum. And to moderate this session, I have Mr. Parag Devdar, who is a Director, Information Security, Asia Pacific for VF Corporation Regional. So, without any delay, I would like to hand over to Parag to moderate this session and set the context for this panel discussion. Over to you, Parag.
Thank you, Vivek. I think Riaz is facing some technical issues in joining, but he should be joining shortly. But in the interest of time, I think just let's start. So first of all, welcome to all our viewers to this panel discussion. I think we have an excellent and distinguished and experienced panel here, and an excellent topic as well. I think a very interesting topic. It's about resiliency for digitizing enterprises. Refining recovery and continuity in the age of extreme digitization. So I think without further ado, let's just get into the discussion. So just to give you a background on what this topic is all about, we all know that most of the companies are going through a phase of digital transformation. And in this pandemic, it has made us sort of reset our strategies for recovery and continuity. Security breaches, ransomware have become very, very common. Along with different disasters which you're facing, even natural disasters. So these kind of business disruptions, they can impact organizations of any size, any location, whether it is weather-related outages or power outages, any virus outbreak events. So for all of this, every organization needs to develop a business continuity plan and have a resilient strategy in place so that the business operations can continue no matter the disruption. Now, a critical component of this business plan is to ensure that users remain productive while maintaining the necessary level of security and control over the user access to corporate resources. So how do we do this? How do we enable seamless workforce productivity? How do we ensure that all our employees, associates, partners, they have the flexibility to work from everywhere, anywhere, and also while keeping the necessary security in place, right? So we're going to discuss a lot about not just security, but overall business resilience as well. So let's start with the panelists. I would like to ask you to just give in a couple of minutes your thoughts on this topic, and just a background about this topic. What do you think about it? Dr. Karpagam, do you want to start?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you for that lovely introduction. The topic for today is very relevant, given that building cyber resilience has become a challenging task in the context of many factors, including an "I won't get affected" mindset. Anything and everything is connected, which has created an exponentially increasing and evolving threatscape. The compromised systems are being used to launch sophisticated attacks like distributed denial of service. They're being used to mine cryptocurrency, etc. And the post-pandemic demand to access from anywhere and to rush to adopt the digital transformations with the second. We have things like state-sponsored crimes, advanced persistent threats become the norm of today. The adversaries and attacks are also evolving, and we are coming up across new concepts and the quicker day. So actually, it is obvious there has to be a shift to verify the vulnerabilities, and everybody has to work under the assumption that the system will get eventually compromised or is already under compromised. So each one of the organization has to be made aware that a failure or breach in maybe an IT app, it may seem innocuous to IT, but it may have serious financial or business implications for the company. So the technology components connected to the infrastructure, though it has a different purpose, they are still vulnerable to the same threats. So having all this in mind, I think today's topic is of much relevance. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karpagam. I think that was a great start. Jaspreet, what are your thoughts?
Thank you, Parag. Thank you, Dr. Karpagam. Thanks, DSCI, for this lovely opportunity to participate in this eminent roundtable conference. I think Parag and Dr. Karpagam, both of you hit the nerve running. I'll just give you a few examples on what we are seeing from the market. The first one I would like to start about is a global risk report, right? Very fond reader of that report every year. 2019 report was very interesting. It said that a pandemic which could affect more than 9 countries at one given point of time, the probability of such an event occurrence is about 15 odd percent, right? And here we are 18 months into the pandemic, all 180 countries affected, and we don't know what the new normal looks like. Is it the new normal, or we go back to history? We don't know. Every day we wake up, it's a new game from a business resilience perspective. Been doing resilience for about 18 years. Worked with a lot of boards on their business continuity, resilience, so objectives. We were in a board meeting in January, and it was an MNC, and they said, what if New Delhi becomes unavailable for a month? And we said, boss, we were talking hypothetical. This is never gonna be happen. And then after 65 days, we entered into a massive lockdown, and no company, no matter how much business resilience you practice, etc., everybody was caught napping. Let's be honest to ourselves on what happened from an industry perspective. So like Dr. Karpagam said, it's an ever evolving field, right? And if I add digitization, right, and you would have seen the joke, everybody is talking about that COVID is the single largest change agent responsible for digitization across the organizations, right? And then we've seen that some of the cloud service providers, their revenues have gone up by 900%. Add to that nobody wants to get up in the morning and see their names in the newspaper because of a cyber breach. Like Dr. Karpagam said, the attack surface has increased. How do we bring all of this together to build a robust resilience plan? I think is going to be the key ask that everybody is going to talk about. And then Parag, you just mentioned about natural disasters. I'm sure everybody would have read what happened 2 days ago in US. A tornado destroyed an entire Amazon warehouse.
Yeah.
And for spare parts, that was their biggest warehouse in that part of the US, right? So there's again a crisis looming over there. Back to you, Parag.
Thanks, Jaspreet. No, I think again, you've brought about quite some interesting points, and we'll discuss further on them. It seems we have lost Agnidipta also. So in that case, no, let's just continue. But I'd also like the viewers, if they have any questions for the panel, please feel free to put it in the chat box. Please feel free to ask, and we'll take those questions as we go along. Let's start with the first question, and Jaspreet, I'm coming back to you again. So looks like till the others join, maybe we'll just continue with you and Dr. Karpagam. Uh, so Jaspreet, as a consultant, you must be working with a lot of different companies and different organizations. What are the trends which you're seeing in the digitization space? What is the speed of digitization? What are the kinds of different models which they're using? And in those models, what are the pitfalls you're seeing, which could raise an issue in terms of continuity of business, continuity of services, and what are some of these? Can you share some of these observations from you as a consultant?
Again, I think absolutely spot on question. There was a time 2017, 18, and I'll give you an anecdote where you used to go to board meetings and say, we come here to talk about cyber digital, and they would say, you've got 5 minutes at the end of the board meeting, right? And now the trend is completely reversed, right? We not only have a seat at the table. I think a lot of consultants who talk about cyber digital are probably the first ones. I'm sure you would have seen this in your organization also, right? As the crisis management team head looms large, right? That they start with it. I would like to start by saying, what are the top 5 things that COVID has brought us, right? When you talk about digitization, it has also brought in a lot of regulatory scrutiny. It has brought in economic uncertainty, a lot of aggressive capital markets, uh, leading to market uncertainty. But the last piece that you just spoke about is the technological innovation that is gone in, right? The time to market is nearing zero, right? If I'm working on a product today from a digital perspective, I want it out there in the market tomorrow. And even industries like manufacturing, mid-sized companies who are laggards in terms of technology are probably now front runners, if I talk about IoT, OT, in leading these entire charges, right? But from a resilience perspective, are they covered uh, to make sure that they don't face a disaster, or they've got their entire, I would say, supply chain pieces fixed? Or look at human resources, for example. Who would have thought before COVID that succession planning would become so important, right? From an organization perspective, and the entire workforce management piece. Whether do I call everybody to office? Do I allow completely offsite work? Is there a hybrid model? What about the regulatory pieces? All of these, when I fit into a digital era, it's becoming quite complicated. So we've seen, working with a lot of clients, that companies have adopted a three-prong approach. I would like to call it today, tomorrow, and beyond. Today is steps that probably I would take between now to next 3 months. Tomorrow is something which will be my initiatives, which I will take from 3 months to say about 8, 9 months. And beyond is something which is like 18 months from now, where I talk about a lot of digital AI, ML interventions that I bring in. If I were to just quickly highlight few points, but in today, tomorrow, and beyond, I would probably look at my crisis management team. I would look at the health of my employees from a digitization perspective, communicate messages, hybrid working model. How do I look at team isolation? When I talk about tomorrow is when the most important pieces of digital come in, right? Is my digital team working in silos? Today, believe me, a lot of organizations are doing tons and tons of stuff on digitization, right? But it's not happening centrally. The IT team is running its own RPA processes. The marketing team is going out and talking to a vendor to do automation of few processes. Finance team is talking about, digitization of treasury. How do you bring all of these together so that another COVID, another variant hits us and you're not caught napping? Is something that you would probably want to look at from a tomorrow perspective, so that if God forbid something like this happens, then how do you bring back everything to a normal? Because that's a very, very critical piece of business resilience that people talk about. And finally, I spoke about the entire silo mentality, in which the organization should not be broken down into artificial boundaries. And last is obviously, using some of these tools to actually automate the entire business resilience piece, AI ML perspective, so that I can set up things like early warning systems, which work quite beautifully in the Western world. Back to you, Parag.
Thanks, Jaspreet. I think again you brought out a few very very interesting points. Today, tomorrow, and beyond. That's a great way to think about crisis management, business continuity, and yeah, there are a lot of things which companies need to think about when they are going on to this journey. Well, great to have Agni back. Hi, Agni. We were
Thank you.
yeah, we were just talking about the trends, what we are seeing in the digitization space, the digitization, digital transformation journeys which organizations are going on, and on this journey, what are the some of the pitfalls? And Jaspreet has gave us his consultant's viewpoint on what he's been seeing, in what other companies, his clients are going through. So maybe would you like to add to that? What are you seeing from your industry point of view? How's the journey in digitization going on, and what could be some of the pitfalls coming through in this journey?
So mm, I, I know I'm not talking on behalf of my company, but uh, what I find is that there are today, if we look at it, there are two kind of companies: those who are already on the cloud and those who are trying to go to the cloud. So the digitization journey is either, and then each of their challenges are different. Those who are on the cloud, for them, infrastructure is a secondary issue in their mind. They're more struggling with, how to make that application available to people when they need it. Even the crisis management issues and things that turn on the table are different. But to complement what you guys are talking about, this is true that uh, cybersecurity is no longer a security issue. It is more of a business issue now, because people have learned that it impacts resilience like no other things probably in terms of its consequences. Because if you have because or rather, let me put it this way: because the industry is still not grown to that level where they can understand what we need to do uh, if one part of my digital system is not available. Now, on the face of it, it looked very easy, right? If like what happened at the beginning of the pandemic, people thought it was another business continuity issue, and they started kicking off their business continuity plans. That can only sustain you till some part. A pandemic is a totally different scenario. A certain amount of resilience was needed in terms of even operation. Today, some of the enterprises are figuring out a way to work with it. You're talking about hybrid workplaces and all that part. But the truth remains that even in the industry that I come from, is a sizable investment in on-prem activity, and you can see this industry is trying to move to the cloud, and therefore the challenges that we are facing today, and unfortunately the challenges that we are facing today are the challenges that everybody else is facing. It's a very unique place to be.
Thanks, Agni. No, you're right. I think definitely the cloud journey is bringing along a lot of challenges. And okay, let's discuss this a little bit further. But coming to you, Dr. Karpagam, uh, you know, uh, we've heard about some of the pitfalls what Agni mentioned, what Jaspreet mentioned, coming from this extreme digitization in the industry. What do you think, in your opinion, what should organizations do to build resilience and sort of try to overcome these kind of issues?
Yes, Parag, thanks for that question. In my opinion, what has to be done to make your system more resilient does not depend upon what actions you take after a system has been compromised and you are grappling to recover from the debilitating effects of the attack. Instead, it depends upon the efforts and investments made and awareness which is created throughout your organization as a pre-measure and a culture in the organization that will keep the company cyber resilient. With remote working being the new normal, identity access requirements have been inverted. There are more users, devices, applications which are located outside of an enterprise than the inside. So the first suggestion that would fall in place would be to keep the operations and customers secure by implementing a zero trust model for devices. However, cyber resilience, like it is being an integral part of the design process, and today the difficulty is that cybersecurity is added as an afterthought to legacy systems, and consequently, implementing a zero trust model may be challenging. And organizations have to remember that their companies are only as safe as the weakest link, right? So just recalling the target attack of 2013, where a vulnerability in the air conditioning control system was just enough for the attacker to penetrate into the systems. And the next thing is assumptions based that all requests from insiders would be safe may not be the right approach, and insider threats do exist. So keeping in mind that finding out insider threats may be difficult, machine learning, AI, and deep learning techniques can be deployed to identify anomalous behavior of apps, connected devices, or apps in the system to adapt to vulnerabilities and attacks. So these disruptive technologies can also automate the response, and analytical methods, digital fingerprinting can be used to detect traditionally difficult to find threats such as these insider threats and also advanced persistent threats. Using these techniques, the more context a team has, the faster they can mitigate any security incident. The next thing is threat intelligence also becomes very important because organizations do not even know when their cybersecurity systems have failed. So intrusions exist in the organization for upwards for 200 days. And even if they discover the malware present in the system, there is zero context of the anomalous activity. Learning from previous attacks also is imminent to keep the organization safe from similar attacks. So, investigating how an attack has compromised the system previously and learning from others' mistakes may be as important as incident response and discovery. So, next is the awareness that has to be created for people in the organization. Like most of the previous attacks have used phishing as a tool to create a backdoor entry to the system. So awareness campaigns and exercise among employees and clients, it is very important for them to act decisively in case of an attack. All the company employees must be trained to know what a cybersecurity attack looks like and what to do in case of an attack. So for threat modeling is necessary, and a threat informed defense strategy should be in place by any company is what I feel. And the MITRE ATT&CK framework, it provides a curated knowledge which models cyber adversary behavior. So it tells us what are the tactics and techniques for both offensive and defensive behavior of cybersecurity. So following or exploring that may help in building the security model for any company. And I also feel that backups are very crucial and inherent in the recovery process. Of course, in case of natural calamities or cyber attacks, backups are very crucial. There are a growing number of cases where data is encrypted and held as a ransom, but is not made accessible even after paying the ransom. So, if the data is not immediately available, especially when it comes to healthcare systems and all, it may be very life-threatening. Users, users of the organization, they should be able to identify a clean copy of the data and recover critical systems and get the business operational. And we are not to forget that when the backups are also a primary target of the attacker. And we can use automating techniques to patches. So whenever the advisory vulnerability in the system, he's quicker than the company to make use of that vulnerability to get into the system. Maybe like RPA, robotic process automation, those kind of things maybe using tools to automate the labor-intensive business processes. The next thing which I just wanted to make a mention was standards. Adhering to standards will definitely help to deter the attack and mitigate the consequences of the compromise. So instead of just awkwardly bolting security at the end of the process, compliance to standards will help us to ensure proper measures in that place. So these are my opinions, Parag.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Karpagam. I think you've covered a lot of things in your talk. I think you mentioned all the technical security measures, the threat intelligence part, the awareness part, the backups, etc. I think these are all the good things, the best practices which companies or organizations should follow to deter a cybersecurity event or an attack, and be able to deal with the incident. I think a very important point you also mentioned is around the standards, and that is where I want to come back to Agni Dipta. So Agni, you are working on a ISO standard, right, for resilience, and you've also been working with BCI Institute on this. No, can you tell us, what this standard is all about, and how this can help organizations build cyber resilience, not just from a security perspective, but beyond that in a wider scope as well.
Yes, actually, the standard that we are working on goes beyond security. It encompasses 5 different elements. So there is service provisioning and service management, which is covered under ISO 20000 and all the aspects therein. It covers risk management, which is covered under ISO 31000. It covers information security, which is 27000, the entire family. It covers business continuity, and it covers industrial control systems, which is where automated industrial IACS or industrial automation in control systems that it focuses upon, and it covers all those areas. So it is not only the resilience that you need to build in from the perspective of cybersecurity, but we are trying to look at it holistically. When I say holistically, one of the things that happen on the ISO forum, as you know, is that there is so much of information already available on standards that people have worked on, and therefore, what we are trying to do is to build a standard that leverages ISO's existing standardization programs that you may have. So, if you are certified on a couple of standards or multiple standards, building resiliency becomes so much easier because there is an aspect of resiliency in almost all the standards. It's not called out so, and there is an additional layer of crisis management that has to be built in. So, what would happen if one part of your organization, which is, so if you're a manufacturing organization, and there is a team of new age manufacturing procedures you want to build in, you want to go to Industry 4.0, and you want a valve to be actually connected to the cloud so that you are able to gain more features into it. There are risks which are associated with it, and there are mechanisms of doing it safely. And in my view, the future of most IT services is probably from the cloud. But the future of most services which are physical in nature will probably be a mixture of cloud and on-prem activities. So think about. I think you probably know about the incident where a valve that was supposed to report how much gas is passing through it was hacked in by the control system, was hacked in by a hacker, and he disguised the communication from the valve sensor to the control system in such a situation in a manner that they never knew that the valve has actually become full until it burst. So these things, or these are called cyber physical attacks. These cyber physical attacks can be pretty damaging and can cause huge amount of panic if they were to spread. So the cyber resilience standard that we are working on encompasses companies who are already on the cloud, the companies that are moving to the cloud, and the companies or rather the activities that are moving to the cloud, and then the activities that will probably never move to the cloud. So and the focus is on the same concept of plan, do, check, and act. So it should be possible for any enterprise to adopt that standard and figure out what are those. In fact, we have defined resilience as the adaptive ability to withstand change. And if that is the target that an enterprise has, then for them to adopt this new standard is going to be so much easier, because we are not creating a new animal. We are just trying to leverage existing procedures, and we are trying to standardize them so that decisions that need to be taken by the leadership based upon the information you obtain from the management layer become so much easier, and it is coherent. Because you see enterprises today, there are different people feeding different information in different templates. And that is a challenge of governance worldwide, right? So if we are able to fine tune all that when it comes to resiliency, then the enterprise's attitude towards adaptability, that is how much would you want to accept, or rather how much would you want to confront a disaster, and how much would you want to mitigate it versus how much you want to go through it and bear it. It's a bit like thinking of how you look at air conditioning during winter. When do you turn on the heat? When do you not turn on the heat? How much cold you're willing to withstand before you really want to start on the heater, especially if you're in a country where heating costs you certain amount of money. I don't know, Parag, if I answered your question, but that's the way that we are looking at it.
No, I think that's very, very interesting. Bringing together all the existing standards, leveraging them, and using them to basically enable decision making, and ensuring that the organization adapts, and is able to withstand all these changes or these kind of headwinds. I think that's the key issue, or the crux of the issue right here. So I think the standard is going to be really helpful in my view once it's available. And you mentioned it's also a certifiable standard, right? So the companies can also
No, we are
certify.
not building a certifiable standard yet.
Okay.
But primarily because this is going to be a guidance standard, but it will
Right.
follow the PDCA cycle. And
Okay.
if you are able to utilize this standard, then you can actually leverage your existing certifications. We're
Right.
still
So
not
existing.
we are still not going to a certifiable standard because it's a new concept. Technically,
Right.
cyber resilience is a very, very new. Let me put it this way: standardizing cyber resilience is a new concept. Cyber resilience probably is a very old concept, but
Yeah.
standardizing cyber resilience is a new concept, and we need to see how enterprises behave over a period of time and when they encounter issues, because the same standard will require you to set a target, right? The standard requires you to set a target that I want to achieve this much resilience in this area, whatever be that area. So let us say you want to achieve resilience of being able to process salaries. Then you set a target for yourself that this is my acceptable adaptability, and you go ahead and implement your processes, leverage everything, and put the whole thing in place. And then you are required to evaluate whether or not you are able to meet that target. And if you're not, then you should be able to adjust and fine tune it to a level when you say, okay, as I said, like a heater, right? This much heat I am willing to pay for and nothing beyond. So I'm going to wear a sweater or a coat and then sit in a temperature which is still acceptable versus putting the whole gas on and spending a lot of money to put the heat so much on. So it's a matter of, resilience will always be an acceptability situation, right? You may decide to take some risk, you may decide not to take some risks, and once you set yourself a target, you should be able to go back and review it and change it based upon how the business how the business goes on. I mean, you could face a new challenge and say, I want
Right.
to mitigate this, and you should be
Sure.
able to. You may face a
Thanks.
new challenge and you might say, I don't want to mitigate this, I want to go through this. You should be able to do so.
Okay, that's very interesting concept. I think that's what risk management is all about, right? So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. So let's move on to you mentioned about overall resilience, cyber resilience, and let's switch gears and move to continuity aspect of it. So coming to you, Jaspreet, uh, we are seeing a huge impact on the global supply chain. This is impacting a number of industries, whether it is a chip shortage, or whether it is a container shortage, vaccination shortage, and so on. So this is impacting the continuity of a lot of organizations. So how do organizations sort of uh, you know work on this and overcome this impact, or overcome this issue of the supply chain issue?
Uh, Very, very good question, Parag. I wish I could, answer this completely. I would have gotten a key to a 150 billion dollar loss that the industry is estimating because of lack of semiconductors. But this is not the first time that we are seeing this. One of the closer home in Gurgaon, one of the largest automobile manufacturers had a strike in their factory about 4 years ago. For about 50 days, their plants were shut, which affected in like them not being able to supply cars for about 3 months. A classical supply chain problem, right? And then what we've seen, in the past is that we've often spoke about that we should have lean supply chain models, and today we are talking about having multiple supply chain models. And I'd like to just bring in a quote here which says that the cost of retaining multiple supply locations today must be seen as an cost of doing business rather than an efficiency. And it's because if I were to look at what's happening across the globe, right, even if I'm able to fix the entire supply chain problem, the government of India is doing massive steps in saying, we'll put up semiconductor plants, we're doing subsidiaries to some of these industries. China is stepping on, US is taking huge steps in solving this entire supply chain problem. But what if a third, fourth, fifth wave, we don't know, comes in and all the borders again unsealed, right? Then how do you justify that cost? Do you do onshoring? Do you do offshoring? Or a new term called new nearshoring? So if I would probably would want to divide these in six strategies that any supply chain should look at. I think multi-sourcing is something that every organization should look at. Near sourcing, platform product, or even the plant harmonization on how do you harmonize the entire supply chain piece is very, very critical. Multi-vendor strategy often is very easy to talk about, but if somebody, for example, if somebody is only making the rear view mirror of a car, and then this is a live example of supply chain resilience, right? You can't have tie-ups with two vendors because that entire mold itself costs about $300,000, right? You can't have multiple supply chain strategies for them, or your entire diversification of the network. Uh, Very easy to say, but very difficult to do is the entire piece around how do you build and the capacity buffers. And finally, last but not the least, is also your ecosystem partners. What we've seen in the industry, and this is happening a lot, is one bottling plant in far south of a very large drinks major was not working properly, and they requested the other their largest competitor for help, and they gave them access to 45 days, right? And then we've seen this happening with telecom operators also in case of national emergencies, where they let users from one network latch onto other networks. While we fix the entire supply chain piece, I think these are some of the initiatives that organizations should look at. And then obviously, since the entire topic is digital, I was reading an article in Forbes which also said that at least 10 to 15% of the global semiconductor industry, the shortage that they're facing, can be solved by AI ML programs also. So maybe going only the hardware way may not be the answer. But as I said in the starting, Parag, I wish I could give you an answer today on this. Back to you.
Thanks, Jaspreet. No, I think you brought out some very good points, like nearshoring, etc., which companies can leverage. And of course, there's no a silver bullet for this, and no, it's going to be a long-term sort of a challenge for the industries, and they have to think long-term. And as you mentioned earlier, also, think about tomorrow, how they're going to manage this issue tomorrow, and start working on it today. So that's something definitely all the industries, all the organizations need to start working on. I think we've had a great discussion so far. Let me see if I have any questions from the audience. But in the meanwhile, quickly, I would like to ask, any of you who would be willing to talk about this, is about the people shortage, the people aspect of it, because we have talked about technology, we have talked about process, but the people, what is the people impact on building resilience, and how can organizations sort of work on this part, on the people part? Because we're talking about the great resignation, we are seeing the new millennials who don't really want to work full time. They want to do freelance activities and so on. So maybe quickly, if anyone wants to talk about this.
I can probably take a stab on it, and as I mentioned in the opening remarks, also, we've uh, a resilience perspective. I think we also, as resilience professionals, are to blame where we uh, did not do too much emphasis to the entire, to the entire workforce resilience piece, and succession planning was one. Second, I think if we were going to offices, there was a lot of strategies that you could put in place. You could cross train people. People see different people doing work, they tend to pick up some work. It's a real challenge, right? And now when organizations are talking about putting their resilience strategies, I think people are at their forefront, right? Companies learned it the hard way. A lot of companies I spoke to, especially in the ITA sector, said, boss, employees can't come to office. How do we ship desktops to their home? And then, you know what, their addresses are 3 years old. We don't even have the current updated addresses. So that's the state where we were 18 months ago. I know a lot of organizations have taken steps to cross train people, to look after their mental health. From a resignation perspective, I think one of the main reasons why resignations are going up is because the lack of, or I would say the disconnect between employer and the employee, because of this entire online work pieces. So I think some of these pieces, if we built into our workforce resilience plan, I think it would help us cater to this emerging problem much better.
Thanks, Jaspreet. Any other thoughts, Agni, Dr. Karpagam, on this?
See, people are always going to be a problem. In my view, that is a problem that is not going to go away. For an enterprise that is trying to be resilient, resilience needs to be in the culture. Now, that's a very high level, preachy statement to make. But the truth is, we've been telling the enterprise to become culturally secure. We've been trying to teach everybody what is information security for a very long time. It has not happened. There are still gaps. Primarily because when we work in an enterprise, we work with the mindset that, I'm going to an organization, they will take care of everything, I will only do my work. If you see each of us, we are exceptionally good risk managers in our own lives. Ask somebody to take a decision on, coming to office on time versus the traffic jam that he faces, you will find 10 different ways to handle it. But when it comes to office and when it comes to work we do and the things that need to be taken care of, then it's different. People are not we're not looking at it from that perspective. So the point that I'm trying to make is that resilience is going to require people's participation. It doesn't matter what amount of automation you do, you still need a person to look at that result of that automation to perform a business task. And person, unless that person is thinking resilience, we are not going to achieve. So people problems are here to stay. We have to find ways to circumvent it, and yet try to build awareness, build the ability of the people to understand what continuity is, what resilience is, and what cybersecurity is.
Thanks, Agni. I think we seem to have run out of time, but I think it was a very, very interesting discussion. Thank you all the panelists for all the great thoughts you've put forward. I think there was a lot of learning from it. Personally, I took a lot of points which I can go back and think about, ponder about, and implement. So thank you once again to all the panelists, and thank you DSCI for giving us this opportunity to be here and to talk about this very interesting topic. And thank you to all the viewers for listening so patiently. Back to you, Vivek.
Thank you, Parag, for moderating session. Thank you, Agnidita. Thank you, Jaspreet and Dr. Karpagam for being a panelist. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you all, and thank you, DSCI. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vivek. Thank you, DSCI team.
Thank you.